John Anderson is with us here at Q104.3, and, people have been hearing you sing on the radio now for about half a century, and you were just listening to yourself singing on the radio.
I was.
And it's still cool, isn't it?
It's pretty cool. I was just rehearsing that song 2 days ago in Orlando with this bunch of young musicians and one guitarist who looks just like you.
Whoa,
So
you have a
that's cool.
doppelganger.
You have a doppelganger everywhere.
Who can play?
I keep bumping into them everywhere.
He told me I look like a lot of people that he knows, and
Do you
that
have
I
a
look
picture?
Swedish.
Do you have a picture, John?
Of the guy?
Yeah.
Actually, we just did a photo shoot, and it's somewhere. Have you got it?
We got to get that.
Michael's got it.
We got to get that.
Okay, well, and he said I looked Swedish.
Well,
Well, Scandinavia.
he is. He's a
on.
Viking. He's more than 90% Viking. His son did that whole blood thing,
Good,
the ancestry thing.
good.
He's a Viking. A Viking.
Taming dragons, I bet.
Okay, the Beatles recorded their first album in one day.
I bet they did.
Every single song, the
bet they did.
entire album in one day. Later on, as things evolved in the music business, a band like Steely Dan would take 3 years to make an album.
Sure.
The album 1,000 Hands, your new album, which comes out next month, has taken 30 years?
Yes.
How is that?
30 years?
30 years.
Well, there you go. Well, we started with my friend Brian Chanton with some good musicians up in Big Bear, which is southeast of L.A., and I'd gone up to Big Bear to get away from the world, and I rented an A-frame. I have my 12-track TIAC, and we started recording these songs, and the rest is history.
Yeah, but it was 30
But that's
years
a
ago.
long history.
It was 30 years ago. And
Well-
you kept getting prominent people involved here and there through the years.
Basically, we got to a point that I was going on tour with Kitaro, and then I was going on tour with Yes, and I never quite got round to finishing it. And Brian went on tour with B.B. King, and all these things didn't happen. And for some reason, I got the tapes and they put them in the garage. So I left them in the garage and got on with life. And then about 2 years ago, a wonderful guy called Tim and a great producer, Michael Franklin, got in touch and said, we'd like to finish that album that you started 28 years ago or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, the tapes are in the garage somewhere. So I got them out and I sent them to Orlando and they put them in the oven.
And the tape, they baked them. Okay, I was going to say the
Wow.
tape was still good. I mean, you were
Well,
lucky.
I didn't know. But they put them in the oven, they bake them, and then they can only play them once on a big 24-track machine, and then they go straight to computer. So Michael was very excited. He says, they really sound good, So he sent me the mixes and things, and he said, I'm going to ask some people to perform on this record, because originally the album was called Uslot, which is a sort of north of England way of saying a lot of us. Come on, Uslot, let's go and play football.
Okay.
Oh, that answers that question.
Yes.
All right.
And so I said, well, I've always wanted Billy Cobham. Do you know Billy Cobham? He says, oh, yeah, actually passed by the other month. I got his number.
World famous drummer.
Billy Cobham, one of the great drummers of all time, who played with a band called Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, Billy played on a song called Come Up and transformed it into a better song.
Well,
Basically.
and you've got Chick Corea,
Oh, yeah, well, that was a year later.
but on the same track.
Same track.
On the piano.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Cain.
Yeah, and my friend Jean-Luc Ponty.
Yes, on violin.
On violin.
These are, I mean,
These are people,
these are massively
maestros of their
right. So
gig.
let me grab a quick clip from that song just to give our friends an example of what that sounds like. Okay, that is Come Up. So let's give this a little listen here.
Only when you stop this love. Come up and see, come up. Come up and see, come up. Come up and see, come up. Come up and see, come up.
That's a little sample of Come Up
Yeah.
from the album 1,000 Hands, which comes out next month. Now, how much of what we just heard, that little 30-second clip,
Yeah.
how much of that was from 30 years ago and how much of it was like from last week?
Well,
mean-
basically, you could hear all the wonderful singers. Most of that was Zap Mama, one of the great singing group from Belgium that I met when I met Kitaro 30 years ago. And all of a sudden, there they are singing on this album with a chorale piece. And, it's like, I think the vocals for that song were done probably last summer. And I said, I need some hand clapping at that moment in time because the song's about 10 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
And it builds and builds and builds. I said, come on, it's got to sound like wonderful. And it does.
John Anderson is with us here at Q104.3. When you started this project 30 years ago, Alan White and Chris Squire were helping you out.
Yeah, well, they were in L.A., and I was up in Big Bear, which wasn't far away, so I called up and I said, listen, I've got a couple of tracks. Would you mind playing on the tracks? I will give you $25 each. And they said, of course we will, John. And so we went into a studio down in LA and laid down some drum and bass tracks one afternoon. It was wonderful. And to hear them again is so fantastic because, they're both unique musicians. So.
I mean, Alan White's been here, and it always fascinated me how he said he had to learn your entire repertoire, like in 12 hours.
Yeah, right. We said
No
we're going
pressure.
on tour in 2 weeks. Do you want to join the band?
Yes, and we
No
had to learn
pressure.
everything.
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I said, he played with John Lennon. He should be able to,
Well, one of the greatest artists in the history of rock and roll, John Anderson, is with us in
Where?
the studio this
Where?
morning here at the Q, and Rock and Roll Hall of Famer.
Yes, true. Thank you.
Took long enough.
Merry
Yeah,
Christmas.
finally. did that tick you off?
No, gosh, no. I always
Well, you were
believed that,
eligible for decades.
yes, but what the hell?
You just didn't care. It just didn't bother you.
Well, I think that the guy who runs that whole thing had a very bad lunch with Chris one time.
Is that the source of the problem?
I don't know. I'm just making it up.
Oh, okay. Okay, we
I-
thought we
big-
were
big-
getting to something
No,
here.
because I thought if that were true, then that
would
mean
make sense.
he would wait until Chris's passing to let you
I
in.
never thought of that. Sorry.
Just like
Yes.
you, yeah.
Oh,
Well, well. Anyway,
I'm in trouble.
I have an email here from a listener named Jim Cook, who identifies himself as the biggest John Anderson fan.
7 foot.
And this is kind of an obscure question, but our listener wants to know.
Please.
Always wanted to know about the Italian song he did with Vangelis. I've heard everything from John's lyrics being a dead language to his voice and words just being an instrument. If possible, Jim, could you ask John about it?
True. Well, you see, Leonardo da Vinci would write with a mirror, and you never knew what he was writing. And I tried to understand what his writing was about, and so I made it up on the spot.
Did that answer his question? I'm not sure.
It's not.
I don't know.
It's not a lyric. Like he said, I just made it up on the spot, and it sounded pretty cool. And I thought, I'll just leave it like that.
Okay. All right.
Thanks for the question, Jim.
Jim, there is your answer. The album is 1,000 Hands, Chapter 1,
Mm-hmm.
question mark.
Yeah. Well, chapter 2 will be done probably next year.
Not in another 30
Okay, but
years?
is it from the same...
Crap, wait a minute. Yeah, in the next 30 years.
No, I'm just wondering. This is 1,000
Thank
Hands,
you.
Chapter 1, and the reason
Yeah.
for the question mark for Chapter 2 is Chapter 2 also from the genesis of this material 30
yes, it
years
is.
ago.
It's some songs that I wrote at that time. I'm making it up.
I'm
making
wondering, and don't make this up, if there are any more lost tapes that we could be looking forward to of some really...
Well, that's true. There are. You see, 20 years ago when MP3s became the norm on the internet, I remembered emailing Chris and Steve saying, "Now we can work without being in the same room."
Does that make it better? Does it
No.
make it easier?
So I said, "Can you send some music and I'll sing and send it back?" And I never heard from them. So I put an advert on my website. I just got my website going at that time. And all these people started sending 1 minute of their music, and I started writing songs with all these people around the world. And that is still ongoing. So from the last 20 years, I've got probably around 50 songs that I think are really genuinely interesting and quite wonderfully produced by these wonderful people who live in, one guy who lives in Romania, a couple of guys in Italy, 3 guys in Holland, 1 guy in Brazil, and so on. And one
That is
hopes-
amazing that you
Wait a
can
minute,
go
so you never
online and
met these
become a
guys?
co-writer with John Anderson.
But you never met them, right?
No, in fact, I did an album just 3 years ago called Invention of Knowledge with a guy, Swedish guy. I met him twice. Once when he said he'd like to do an album, and the second time was when we did a photo shoot for the album, because we made the album through the internet. And,
That's
and,
crazy.
well, people say, how do you do that? I said, well, we're on the same planet.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be in the same room to make music.
That's
We're on
so
the same,
strange.
We're on the same planet. You should listen to the album. It's quite beautiful.
Yeah.
It's quite beautifully produced as well.
And what's the name of it again?
Invention of Knowledge.
Okay. Now, one of the tracks on 1,000 Hands, our friend Carmine Appice, who, he and his brother both pronounced their last name differently. So
True.
it's
True.
like a nutty situation. But he's one of the drummers on one of the tracks
Yep.
that we will sample.
Yep.
And is it Ramalama or Ramalama? Or
Ramalama. It's interesting that this has become quite a favorite of many people when they've heard the album. They love Ramalama because it's a song that every morning when I wake up, I'm very lucky to have a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful wife, and we love having breakfast in bed, which I love to create, make a little, breakfast, and then afterwards I'll wash up and then go in the studio and sing. That's my morning. I got to go in the studio and I start doing vocalizationing, where I create vocals, very much like the pygmies in West Africa. When they go out hunting and foraging, they're always singing, beep and pop and beep and pop and beep. Beautiful singers, and I mimic that. And this is an idea that became Ramalama.
Okay, so here's a little clip.
Get up and show me your love. You are the answer to my life's center. You really sing out back. All for the giving of love every day. Oh, lama, 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 oh, lama, lama,
John Anderson with us here at
Isn't that happy and
Q104.3.
positive sounding?
Yes,
right?
it just makes you feel good to
Yeah.
hear it. And I'm sure many of our friends were made to feel good when John said he likes to make his beautiful wife breakfast in bed and then likes to clean up.
Oh, by the way, what do you
afterwards
make?
And then sings.
What do you make?
Well, at the moment we're definitely into we would call it porridge, but it's Quaker oats with some almond milk, and she loves the coffee there, and a little bit of fruit, and that'd be great.
Sounds wonderful.
Porridge.
Porridge, very Scottish, mate.
Yeah.
But it's Quaker oats.
Same thing.
The website is johnanderson1000hands.com or johnanderson.com, and on Facebook at the John Anderson. Now tonight there's an album launch event at the Cutting Room in Manhattan.
Yes, I'm going to be talking, answering questions, and singing a couple of songs and telling a joke. I have one joke. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
Is it clean?
Do you want to hear it?
Yes. He's John Anderson. You're not going to say
it's,
no.
It's not my joke. It's Rick Wakeman's that he told me maybe on the last tour 200 times, because he forgets that he tells you the joke. And he goes, do you remember this joke, Johnny? People who live in Dubai, they never watch the Flintstones, but people who live in Abu Dhabi do.
Okay. There are a few tickets left for tonight's event at the Cutting Room, which is on 32nd Street by Park Avenue. You can go to backstoryevents.com or thecuttingroomnyc.com for that. And John's world tour kicks off in Orlando, Florida on March 11th. It's the Past, Present, Future
Sure.
tour. And John will be performing material from the new album as well as some classics by Yes. And in our area, you'll be able to see the show April 3rd at the Ridgefield Playhouse in Ridgefield, Connecticut. April 4th at Bergen Pack in Englewood. And there are also you'll also be in South Jersey in Collingswood at the Scottish Rite Auditorium. Bergen Pack is nice. I've been to shows
Beautiful,
there
yeah.
in Englewood. Now, the song Makes Me Happy features the guitar artistry of, among others, Rick Derringer.
True.
Now, I've got, and there's the horn section is from Tower of Power, and Michael Winslow from Police Academy is on the track
Yeah.
from the movie.
Yeah.
And as the beatbox.
Yes.
Yes. So
And he does very, very good.
let's hear a little clip of that.
Who you are makes me happy. Just to be where you are makes it all worthwhile. Just to make love to you feels so good inside. Feels so good inside. Make me feel so good, so good, so good. Woo!
Just hearing these little clips makes me feel good inside.
Are they all happy songs?
Yes, of course. What else is there?
I mean,
Wow, I love your attitude.
it really does sound like it just picks you up.
You know, this is an album you have to get and play a song every morning, first thing in the morning. Forget the meditation thing. Play John Anderson.
Okay, and the release date is March 31st. Available for pre-order now at johnanderson1000hands.com. There's vinyl. There's the CD package.
Yeah.
There's the digital download. There's free U.S. shipping. Personally, I like physical product myself
Yeah.
that I own and that's in my apartment and I have on my shelf.
True.
You
true.
know, that's why I really like the physical.
Can I ask you something, Jim?
Yeah.
Do you have anything to play it on?
Yes.
Okay. 'Cause sometimes he worries me that way.
No, I was just thinking of one of those old record players, with the big needle.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay.
Well, that
We
you'd have to
bought
go way
one of
back for
those.
that.
We had to buy another turntable.
Very important.
Yeah, you got to have the turntable.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, John, thank
Hey.
you so much for
Thank
visiting with
you.
us this morning.
Congratulations on still being around doing what you're doing wonderfully.
Well, he was inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame.
About time.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Both
you so
Hall
much.
of Famers here.
It's wonderful.
Which one in the room doesn't fit? No, that would be me.
No, but you're
His
beautiful.
manager's going me. They're
Sorry,
both of us.
You're beautiful. So
Oh,
what
thank
do we
you,
know?
John.
Yes.
And you're a woman taking over the world, thank God.
Yes.
Okay.
You gotta go quick.
John Anderson, thank you so
John
much
Anderson.
for visiting with us
My
this morning
pleasure,
here
my
at
pleasure.
Q104.3.
New York's classic rock, Q104.3.